Okay, let's switch now and talk a little bit about some secrets to effective collection of delinquent assessments. So this is going to be the cheat sheet that is pink. Okay, so our economy is significantly better than it was in 2008, 2009, 2010, but we're still struggling in terms of, I bet that most of you that are sitting in this room here today have at least one member of your association who's not paying assessments. So just curious, I always like to do this, show of hands, how many of you have at least one owner who's not paying assessments to your association? Okay, so as we can see from the show of hands, everybody here has, at least everybody, almost everybody here has a delinquent owner in your possession. In 20 years of doing business, and just for my background, when I first started my firm in 1996, I was so young that people didn't want to work with me because I was so young. And so what I did was, I was 25, and I decided that I was going to do just assessment collection for associations. And I love collecting money. Anybody? It was like my hidden calling in life. And so I was very green, and I really honed in my skills on collecting assessments for associations. That's how I built my firm. And then after about 2 years of just doing assessment collection, then we expanded into doing full general counsel association, including collections for associations. So what I'd like to share with you is, in my 20 years of doing this, what works? There are specific strategies that you can implement as a board to get rid of these delinquencies. Now there's going to be some people that I'm just going to call throwaways. There's going to be some people that I'm going to look at the file and I'm going to tell you, I cannot collect this money, okay? And when I tell you that, you're probably going to be mad. Why? And I'll tell you, it's better that I tell you the truth. Would you rather have me spend $2 grand, $3 grand chasing after bad money? No. And so what we do is we've come up with a system internally in our office that's a proactive approach to get people to pay assessments. So right now it's expected that there's 10 to 20% of homeowners that are not paying their assessments in a timely manner. Proactive approach is going to mean fewer homeowners in arrears, a stronger position financially for the association. Okay, what are my secrets? And I kind of just follow this cheat sheet here. First, obtain owner information up front. When your new owners move into your association, we strongly suggest that you shake them down for information. By this I mean that when they go through the escrow company, the day that they close, there's all kinds of paperwork that they're filling out. Have a sheet that the association requires them to fill out with their name, their employer, any other alternate addresses that they may have for the association, their bank account number, their mortgage company at that time. All of that information can be extremely helpful to us down the road, a rainy day when they stop paying. It gives us just kind of some information that we might not be able to get otherwise. And that's just placed in the owner's file for a rainy day. Number 2, accurate bookkeeping. Make sure that whoever is doing your bookkeeping for the association has the correct information regarding each owner. There's nothing worse for me than to send a demand letter to an owner, and we find out after we send the demand letter that there was a mix-up and the management company credited the wrong check to the wrong account. You've lost, people don't like that. That's going to be a very unhappy call, right? And so we want to make sure that the bookkeeping's accurate. You want to make sure that you're charging late fees properly. And that the current charges, that you're charging the late fee on the right day that the late fee can be charged. Remember, in Arizona, all of you should be charging a late fee pursuant to the statute. If you're a planned community, you can charge a late fee after the assessment is 15 days past due. If you're a condo, you can charge it at any time. Could be as short as the 2nd day of the month, or the 5th day of the month, or the 15th. State law, if you're a planned community, says that you can only charge a late fee, which is $15 or 10% of the assessment. So there's a maximum that you can charge if you're a planned community. If you're a condo, there is no maximum, but you want to make it reasonable. Okay, so when we get to step 2, accurate bookkeeping, when a file is turned over to our office, we look very, very carefully at the ledger to look for potential mistakes. Because the worst thing that can happen is that we send out, a letter to the owner and there's wrong information in there or incorrect information. So, and if we see something that's wrong, we'll go back to the manager or to the treasurer and say, hey, this wasn't set up right. We need to do this right for all other homeowners so that you don't have a problem down the road. Okay, number 3, collection policies, late fees. Make sure strong policies are in place and are enforced uniformly. You have to have a policy for dealing with your delinquent owners. If you don't, you are creating an open door for them to make you their credit company, basically. And so what we found in doing collections for so long is that a collection policy sets the standard for, when people pay. So you should be communicating with your owners that, okay, the late fees charged on X date. The property is liened typically on 30 to 60 days past due. It's turned over to the attorney at 120 days, whatever you set up for your association. And then follow it. There's lots of times where I have some associations in particular where they just don't really have a delinquency problem, but when they do, they just let it hang on for a really long time. And, it's not a good message to the rest of your homeowners, but also you have the same problem with that owner again and again and again. There are some people that have been in my office 5 times. That shouldn't be happening. Okay, so what do we do to make sure that that doesn't happen? What we found is that owners have 10 bills sitting in front of them every month, and they only have the money to pay 6. Okay, and so they do this little mental math on each bill. Okay, my Visa bill, I have to pay that or it's going to ding my credit. So that gets in the to be paid pile. My gas bill, got to pay that because I don't want to spend the summer in Arizona with, no APS bill. And then they get to the association bill and kind of the discretionary type bills in their mind. We want them to look at that association bill and think, that is going to cost me money if I don't pay that. I'm going to hear from that Beth Mulcahy. She's going to lien my property. She's going to charge me her attorney fee for that demand letter, and it's going to cost me way more money to pay this down the road than if I just pay it now. You want it to get in the paid pile. How do we get it in the paid pile? We communicate to the owners. Number 4, we are constantly communicating to the owners, you need to pay your assessments on time. Here's why. Because we have a budget. We only budget for the expenses of the association. If an owner doesn't pay, we're short on the amount of money that we have in our kitty. Here's our delinquency policy. If you don't pay, here are the consequences. And one thing that we found, there's a research that was done by the Community Associations Institute, a national organization, think tank. What do you think's the one thing that owners read? Their bill. So put the collection policy right there on the bill. So when they're making a decision, they look at that bill to pay it and they look, ooh, I'm going to get liened 30 days after this is due. And that lien is going to cost me how much? They're going to pay the bill. They're much more likely to pay the bill. Okay, timely action. The longer you wait, the less likely you will be paid. That is a fact. So get on these delinquencies earlier rather than later. It is so much easier for me to squeeze money out of somebody when the delinquency is less than $1,500. Once it gets to the $13,000, $18,000 range, then the owners are talking about bankruptcy. There's no way out, they think. So we want to make sure that we're on these delinquencies early and that we're following our policy that we put in place. Okay, this is the best piece of advice I'm going to give you right here. Due diligence, credit evaluations. The first thing our firm does when a file is turned over to us is we do a full due diligence and credit evaluation analysis of every owner. So before we spend 1 cent, we look at the total financial picture of this person. and we determine whether or not it's a good credit risk for us to spend money to go after them. And I think that is a really, really good idea, because there's going to be some owners that their credit is such a train wreck, you don't want to spend money on it. And I'm doing you a favor by telling you that up front. Maybe we send that one to a collection agency. So what are the things that we can find out on the due diligence credit evaluation? Where do they work? Do they still work there? Are they paying their mortgage or deed of trust? How far behind are they? Is anyone else leaning their property? Who else is looking at their credit? What does their credit card debt look like? Any other judgments against them? Bankruptcy? Is there a trustee's sale pending? I mean, we check all their social media. I'm kind of telling all my secrets here, but we get on Facebook, see what's up. Just got back from my trip from Cabo. I'm like, are you kidding me? Pay the association. We're checking on LinkedIn to see, can you tell how much I love this? That's my secret desire, to bust these people so they pay. We have a whole checklist of all these different places that we're checking, and then we report a snapshot back to you. Oh yeah, we can get the money, and here's how. And I'm big on strategy. I don't like going through life without having a game plan, goals. Same thing on collections. We want a strategy for every file. How are we going to get the money? I tell you before we spend any money, here's my strategy. And then I ask for the green light from you to go forward with the collection of the file. It's an extremely effective method to get the money. It's worked really well for our firm. One thing I want to caution you on is there are some firms out there that are doing, some law firms out there that are doing something that's called free legal. Okay, I'm married to a lawyer. I come from a family of lawyers. Lawyers aren't free, okay? So what I can tell you is, if you are thinking about going with somebody who is doing free legal or will do your collection work for free, really look at that carefully, because there's an asterisk. Actually, I was looking at the CAI's local chapter magazine, and the inside cover, first page, was a lawyer that was saying, we do free collections for HOAs, and then it had an asterisk. And then I went down and got my magnifier out and read the bottom. It's not free, okay? So be real careful, read the fine print, because on a lot of those people, it's free as long as I'm your lawyer, but then when you fire me, you now owe 3 times what the going rate would have been. So just be real careful on that. I am from the Midwest. I could not do that. A lot of the lawyers started doing that about 5 years ago, and I refused to do it. So just know, look at that fine print, read those asterisks, ask questions when you're making a decision on what type of collection plan you're going to go for. The last one is understanding your legal remedies. We actually have a cheat sheet that is just on this. It's the kind of champagne-colored cheat sheet. Basically, there's 2 ways that you can collect assessments from an owner. Okay, the first way is, let's see if I got it on here. The first way is this is the most common way, is to get a personal judgment against the owner in justice court. And this is, I'd say, we have probably 900 files in our office right now, and collection files, and I would say probably 800 out of the 900, we're going this route. Why? Because it's fast, it's inexpensive, and it works. Okay, so how does it work? We file a lawsuit in justice court. We have to go to the local precinct, wherever your association is located. We ask the court to award judgment in our favor. We have to personally serve the owner with the paperwork, which we do. And then most of these cases, I'd say probably 85% of them, we just get a default judgment. The person never responds. We get a default judgment saying, Johnny Appleseed owes ABC Association, whatever, $1,200. And all the amount that's included is all the assessments, all the late fees, all the collection costs that maybe your management company charged, and then the attorney's fees are all added into that judgment. And with that judgment, what we can do is, and we already knew our strategy, remember, because we would go back to that prior slide where we did our credit evaluation. With that piece of paper that says Johnny Appleseed owes the association, we can garnish that person's bank account. So what do we do with the garnished bank account? We go to the judge, we say, Judge, order Bank of Arizona to withhold the judgment amount from this person's bank account. Okay? Judge orders it, there's a hold on the account, and the money is given to the association by the bank. I can tell you right now, being the receiver of the calls from the owners, they don't like that. That might be my first communication with them. And so that's an effective means. How do we know where they bank? Go back to that information sheet, right? We found out when they moved in, or maybe they have when they did pay, they had it on auto debit. Or maybe they paid once. Anytime a check comes through our office, we keep a copy of the check. So we're really looking for banking information. Another way that we can collect on this justice court judgment is to garnish their wages. We go to the judge, we say, Judge, this Johnny Appleseed works for Honeywell. And we don't just guess, by the way, that Johnny Appleseed works at Honeywell. We pick up the phone and we call the HR department and we say, does Johnny Appleseed work here? Okay, you want somebody that's going to take that extra step. And so we garnish the wages of Johnny Appleseed. The judge will order 25% of each paycheck payable to the association, and we get paid over time through the 25% of each paycheck. The last way that is harder, not impossible, but harder to get the money is to garnish a tenant's rent. And in this case, we go to the judge, we say, Judge, Johnny Appleseed has Susie Q as a tenant in his property. They're not paying assessments, we've got a judgment. The judge orders Susie Q to pay the rent to us. Okay, and there's all kinds of dancing that goes on with this, let me tell you. Because the landlord, Johnny, tells Susie, I'm gonna evict you, right? And so we already know that he's gonna do that, so we already have a letter to Susie that served with him when she served with the garnishment that says, he cannot do this under the law. If he does do this, the judge can put him in jail. So we already have the question answered before Johnny even tries to ask her that at the thing. So those are our three different remedies that we collect the money on through a justice court judgment. It's very effective. It works. There's some benefits and disadvantages which are more thoroughly outlined in the cheat sheets. Let's talk a little bit about now foreclosing an assessment lien. This is a more serious remedy. 2010, 2011, we were not doing this, okay? What is a foreclosure? It's when we actually foreclose the lien on a lot and the association becomes the owner of the property. Now, the only times that I'm advising clients to do this is in a couple different circumstances. Number one, the owner has significant equity in the property, okay? By significant equity, maybe the property's worth $300,000 and they, only have a deed of trust or a mortgage on the property for $100,000. That's $200,000 in equity. Okay, this person is not going to lose their home to the HOA for a $2,800 lien, right? That person's going to pay. The other time that we'll foreclose is when the owner is a train wreck and the association doesn't care that they're upside down. We just want them out of here, okay? That doesn't happen that often, but when it does, typically the board is pretty adamant. We want this person out of here. We don't care that we're never going to get the money. We just want the bank to come in and take the property over and get rid of Johnny Appleseed. So foreclosures are tricky. It's a sticky wicket. A lot of things can go wrong. So before we would ever foreclose, we want to talk through the options with the association. Some things that can go wrong on a foreclosure are maybe the owner stops paying their mortgage or deed of trust during the foreclosure, and the mortgage or deed of trust forecloses while we're trying to foreclose. That's bad, okay? That's really bad because the owner, the first deed of trust is ahead of our lien by law. So before we ever foreclose, we check the credit report to make sure that how far behind they are on their mortgage. If they're behind at all, even 30 days, I'll advise you not to foreclose because you potentially could lose your money. Some other things that can happen is sometimes the owners file bankruptcy. Having looked at credit reports for the past 20 years, I can look at a credit report and say, yep, that person's gonna file bankruptcy. So if I look at it and I tell you that, I'd say, this is not a good gig to file a foreclosure here because this person is like a hair away from filing bankruptcy. You may just want to wait and see what happens with the credit the next few months. Basically what you do is you go to Superior Court, you file a foreclosure complaint. Most of these are handled via a default judgment, which means the judge orders, they don't show up, they don't dispute it. We get a court order calling for a sheriff's sale of the property. We go to the sheriff with the court order, the sheriff notices a sheriff's sale, and the property is sold to the highest bidder at the sheriff's sale. Now, if nobody wants the property, who gets the property back? The association. So we all need to be on the same page on that because we don't want any surprises, right? Sometimes boards, they don't like surprises. I don't like surprises either. So when we're at the outset, when we decide, are we going to proceed forward on this, we want to talk through, okay, here's doomsday. Here's best case scenario. Here's what I think is going to happen based upon my experience, so that we all go into the foreclosure with the same expectations that, okay, this could happen, doubtful, this is what's more likely to happen. But just in closing on foreclosures, what I would say is if they have significant equity, it's the way to go. Because people are gonna pay, they're gonna pay. It works. People don't wanna lose their home if they have all that money in there. We go through the advantages and the disadvantages. Foreclosures take a little longer and they cost more money than a justice court action and a superior court.